Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men Volume 2, number 34, cover dated July 1994. So the cover is very striking, very eye-catching. We've got Beast there front and center. We've got Gambit and Psylocke facing off against some unknown threat. There is no cover caption, and I don't know, maybe it could use one, but there's sufficient visual interest here and the focus on those three X-Men, I suppose, to get our attention, get us to pick this issue off the shelf. But it's only inside the issue will we learn what these metallic gizmos are and where the X-Men are for this particular scene. So the cover is by Andy Kubert, inked by Matthew Ryan. And one last thing I want to note before opening this up to the splash page is the corner box, and this is the very last time we see the Jim Lee art for the blue team. Of course, at this point, Cyclops is on honeymoon, and Wolverine has left the X-Men, has taken a, as it turned out, very extended leave of absence from the X-Men. But this is the last time we see this cover corner box that goes all the way back to X-Men number 1. X-Men Volume 2, number 1, and we've been pretty much looking at the comic with that corner box for about 3 years, but it's gone after this issue. So let's open this one up to the splash page. Well, it's mostly an anchor image here. And the setting for the issue, everything takes place in a single setting. This one, which happens to be the state home for foundlings in Sage, Nebraska. And this is the orphanage that Scott Summers grew up in before he was taken away from it by Professor X. I like the little detail of the hanging tire or wheel from the tree out here. But the orphanage is abandoned, and longtime readers of X-Men will know that it is the base for Mr Sinister. And so we're going to have a little exploration of that in this issue. So the title of the story is Life and Consequences, and the creative team is Fabian Nicieza, writer, Andy Kubert breakdowns, Matt Ryan finished art. So that means that Kubert is providing rough pencils and Matt Ryan is going in and providing much more detail in the inks. Bill Oakley, letterer, and Digital Chameleon, colorist. So there are a couple of lettering choices in this placement of speech balloons that don't work, and I'll point those out as I get to those pages. So we've got Psylocke and Gambit going into the orphanage, and there's a little kind of dry joke here by Gambit regarding Psylocke's comment how lonely and terribly sad that children were expected to thrive in such desolation. And he says, should see some of the places I called home share. So we don't really know about Gambit's life as a child. We know he was adopted by Jean-Luc Lebeau, whose surname he took, but we don't know what his childhood was like. That's still a mystery for us. And then he makes his little joke here. At least this explains why Cyclops was never fun at parties, before they make their way in through this little window into the basement of the orphanage. One other thing I want to note here regarding the contribution that Matt Ryan is making with the finished art is I find his line work softer, more rounded than Andy Kubert's. And I also like his choice of heavier blacks on the costumes for Gambit and especially Psylocke here. I think it looks very, very good. Last thing to note before moving on from this page is Kubert, under time pressure, providing breakdowns, is not using perspective grids on the orphanage here. He's drawing this by eye. He's eyeballing the perspective here, in particular on the side of the orphanage building. And it looks good, it works. I like this busted open barrel here that Psylocke is perched on as well. So there's some nice art in this issue, even if Kubert is only providing breakdowns. I think Matt Ryan does an excellent job on the finishes. I'm impressed with it throughout. And again, here you see that this kind of softer line, you can see it on the anatomy of Beast here. The way the muscles are rendered, it's less of that kind of boxy geometric style that sometimes Kubert does, which you can see a little bit of it here on Gambit's face. But throughout the issue, it's mostly a softer, rounder line and much more blacks filled in on the costumes, which I think looks really well. So they slip into the basement of the orphanage, and outside in the Blackbird is Rogue and Beast, and Psylocke is maintaining telepathic content with them. Beast, in the absence of Cyclops, is acting as blue team leader in the field. So he has decided to send Psylocke and Gambit in. First and foremost, obviously, they're the stealthiest of the blue team. That's why he's sending them in. He's holding Rogue in reserve for backup should there be any trouble. So there's also a bit of an atmosphere between Rogue and Gambit because of what Rogue learned from Sabretooth at the end of the previous issue. It's also why they're here in the orphanage. Sabretooth has given them information on how to get in and what to expect to find there. Gambit says here, much as I hate his guts, he's talking about Sabretooth, I gotta admit that what Creed told us wasn't no lie. So Psylocke says exactly where Creed told us to expect it, Gambit. This is this secret panel that opens up access to sub-basements under the orphanage. She says a hidden doorway leading to an underground chamber. I found that very little of what he has to say is a lie. Oh, and this is exactly this problem with the speech balloon placement. So we go from here to here, naturally enough, but we go from here. Actually, we want to go over here because with your conventional reading of speech balloon placement, you read left to right and across the page, left to right and across the page. And it's the sound effect is even drawing the reader over here, but the proper order of dialogue is Psylocke first, then Gambit up here, and then down to Psylocke again. So it doesn't quite work exactly. And there's two more examples of such problematic speech balloon placement in the issue. But anyway, back to the story. They're heading down into this sub-basement, and who is this figure watching them with these claws? Who could it be? So down they go, and this is really interesting. They find a chamber that is the main complex of Sinister's underground base beneath the orphanage. Now what we see here with the throne like major seat here is the one designed for Sinister way back in issue 239 of Uncanny X-Men. There's a review of that issue on the channel. So if you look at that issue, you'll see this exact design for Sinister's throne, designed by Mark Silvestri. So it's nice to see Kubert looking back at that and referencing it here for this particular image. I really like the art on this page, in particular this view that we have of Gambit and Psylocke here, looking at them from behind, looking towards the throne. And the spotting of blacks on Gambit's coat looks really, really good. And again, that use of dark black on Psylocke looks great. Really good work by Kubert and Matt Ryan. So Rogue says to Beast, they're inside Sinister's main complex, aren't they, Hank? And he says, I believe they are. Don't go much further, kiddies. Rogue and I will join you in a moment. If what Creed described maintains true to form, you've descended into the first ring of the Inferno. So Beast is there because he wants to learn from Sinister whether he's discovered anything more regarding the legacy virus, and that's why he's there. But he is exercising caution in terms of how they enter into Sinister's complex. Great inking here on the knuckles of Beast's hand. Really, really nice stuff. And I like the shadow too, from cast from the computer onto Beast's upper lip there. Just very nicely done. The silhouette of his finger with the claw as well. Really nice work. Dante's Inferno is what he's referencing there. Dante Alighieri's 14th century epic poem, The Descent into Hell. So They're ready for anything, and then they are struck by these shuriken or throwing stars. This is a great anchor image here of them evading the throwing stars. Psylocke using her katana and Gambit using his bow staff with a little DeLuca effect around him. Very nicely done. And then who does it turn out to be? Except for a dead marauder, Riptide, supposedly killed by Colossus way back in Uncanny X-Men 211, back during the Mutant Massacre storyline. So, Psylocke says here, the truth is our assailant exhibits no discernible sentient thoughts, except for raw emotions, which is odd, since we can now see our attacker is the marauder known as Riptide. A man the X-Men know to be, at the very least, a ruthlessly cunning murderer, and at last report, very, very dead. Okay, so what's he doing up and around? So Beast tells Rogue to get in there, help Gambit and Psylocke out. Actually, he tells Gambit and Psylocke to wait for Rogue to arrive. And basically, Gambit here says as he leaps over Riptide, you gotta be kidding. The day that Remy LeBeau needs to hide behind someone else to handle a punk like this. So they're taking on Riptide here. Great image of Gambit here, and he's had a modification to his bow staff, which he explains here in the dialogue. This is a great shot of him with foreshortening there on the legs. We see him from behind as he slams the bow staff into Riptide, and he's charged it kinetically. And he says here, the bow staff is complete with some modifications that Forge installed into it between hors d'oeuvre at Scott and Jean's wedding. Helps to put a little spark in our new friend's eyes. So he hits him with it, but he didn't kill him. So he says here, we don't have time to be gentle, since this Riptide buffoon may have more of his marauder buddies hanging around. But Psylocke doesn't sense anyone else. But as she mentioned earlier, her increased powers increased since Revanche's death. Revanche's portion of Psylocke's telepathic powers by some means were reverted to Psylocke, actually through a kiss with Matsuo Tsurayaba, and she got the full degree of her telepathic abilities back, which she hasn't had since going through the Siege Perilous, and she's working on trying to control them again. Anywho, here they are wondering about how this can be Riptide. Also, he's got a bad rash on his body as well. So Psylocke says, this doesn't make any sense, Gambit. Colossus killed Riptide when the Marauders massacred the Morlocks. Again, as I said earlier, see Uncanny X-Men 211 and my review of it for more on this. And she's asking him, why can't my side probe pick up anything from him? Then Rogue arrives, great image of her smashing through the wall down in the basement. And again, I just really like the finishing here by Matt Ryan, and the rendering of the muscles in her arms here. Looks really, really good. So she gives it, even though she's been given Gambit the cold shoulder, she's obviously concerned about him here. And Gambit is delighted. He says, like Elizabeth said, it's the thought that counts, and you were worried about me, weren't you? So, but she says, just do my job, Cajun. And Psylocke investigates the throwing stars, the projectiles. She says they're actually organic, perhaps some sort of hardened resin secreted through his skin. That's interesting. And then Gambit is working on another control panel to open up another secret passage into what turns out to be the actual heart of Sinister's complex. This is a great image here of the trio looking into the heart of the room that's opened up before them. And who is it that they see? Oh yeah, one other thing to note here. I like the choice by Matt Ryan here to black out the green portion of Rogue's costume, and again the deep blacks on Psylocke's costume as well. Just looks really, really good. And here we go. Got to turn this one sideways for the double page spread. And who is it? It's Threnody, who was last seen in issue number 27 of the title, Volume 2 of X-Men, when she went away with Mr. Sinister, who promised that he would help her with her powers, which he had no control over at the time. And reluctantly, Beast agreed to that. So there's some unfinished business here for Beast. So this room is at the center of Sinister's complex. And we're told here in the narrative captions, the chamber stretches further than their eyes can see. Layers folding into and out of other layers. Make sure you can see that on screen. Stacked against, between and through each other in ways which seemingly defy all logical laws of gravity. And at the center of it all, in a calm, bemused state, which belies the seeming insanity of everything around them, they see a woman whom they had once begrudgingly left in the care of Mr. Sinister. The empathic mutant known as Threnody calls out in a soft, almost mocking voice, "The X-Men at last. Rogue, I know. You others are unknown to me." And just want to comment on this. So obviously very difficult what's described here in the narrative captions to draw, but we have these computer images of various characters. I think that's Pyro there. And also, are they just regular humans in some cases? What is going on here? Well, we'll get an explanation coming shortly. And what Threnody says is, did anyone mention that opening up the Tesseract release without the proper access backup codes was going to trigger their internal security measures? So what are they? They are these mechanical devices that we're seeing on the cover. So that's what they are. This is a great image here of the trio getting ready to face off against these machines. And then Beast arrives just in time, pulling the plug on them. That's what he's holding up here in effect. Pretty cool image of him bounding down to where they are in the chamber. And he greets Threnody and says, "I'm both pleased, relieved, and I must confess, a bit surprised to see you so lucid," because she was out of her mind the last time we saw her in issue 27 because of the way her powers were working. And she is indeed lucid, and says when he says, "No offense meant, of course, none taken, Dr. McCoy. When we first met, I was rather a head case, wasn't I?" And she says, "I want you to know, Doctor, that going with Sinister was the best thing that could have happened to me. He was able to stabilize the plasma buildup in my system. And in the last few months, I've learned how to handle the depressions caused by my power." So she is thriving here. And that's interesting. This is another great image here. I really like this angle on Rogue where we're looking at her and her body's twisted around. It kind of reminds me of sometimes in Renaissance art when you see either a god, a flying god in this type of shape, or an angel. Reminds me a little bit of Michelangelo as well, and some of the paintings on and angles on the Sistine Chapel ceiling and on the Last Judgment as well, in the same chapel in the Vatican. Cool, I really like that. And I like the angle here where, you know, they're standing on the horizon line, but we're looking up slightly at them. Difficult to do. Really, really nice work on this page. And again, that kind of softer line from Matt Ryan you can see it in particular on the anatomy on Beast there. The muscle rendering on his arm in particular, his chest, on the legs, the little indication of fur on the side of his leg there, and on his arm there. Really, really nicely done. Really great work. And the digital coloring is working well in this issue as well. Digital Chameleon. It looks good. It's not overpowering the art. So there's been adjustments by the Digital Chameleon team in terms of the way that they were seeing the computer colors turn out on the printed page, and it's looking really good in this issue. No complaints in this issue at all. So what happens here is Rogue is basically saying to Threnody and Gambit and Rogue say this, that Sinister is using her. And she says here, that when Threnody says that she's using Sinister, Rogue says, and this is a great angle on Rogue here as well, with the foreshortening and the big hand and down at the belt and the rest, looks really good. It ain't that simple, she says to Threnody. I know. Once someone like him gets his claws into you, a simple goodbye when you're ready to leave ain't in the cards. It becomes one debt after another, and the price you pay is the bleeding of your soul. And Gambit here in shadow thinks, bleeding of your soul, where you heard that one before, Remy? And this is yet more follow on from Gambit's miniseries. You can see the reviews of that miniseries on the channel, where Rogue was accidentally in skin-to-skin contact with Belladonna Boudreaux, that's Gambit's wife, and learned by virtue of that Belladonna's memories, and has been using some expressions of Belladonna's in recent issues of X-Men. And this is all a lead up to the Rogue limited series that's coming up in the autumn of 1994. So, what's Trenody's response? And I like the choice here where we just see a small portion of her face and the rest is her hair. It's a nice little design idea by Kubert. And she says, I appreciate your concern, Rogue, really I do, and you'll understand that I'm even more aware of what Sinister is really all about in 1 second. So she opens up yet another chamber in the complex, and here there's something else amazing for the X-Men to take in, and it's a storage facility, as Beast discerns. But for what historical data? No, the labels. This is for genetic material. This is Sinister's library for the keeping of DNA samples culled from all these people. This is cloning material. Beast puts it together. And look at some of the names here. We've got Jean Grey, Brian Xavier, that's Professor X's father. You've got Jay Kurtzberg, probably, Jack Kirby. You've got Oppenheimer. You've got F.D. Roosevelt, Jack Abel, former Marvel inker. Thomas Edison's there, Woodrow Wilson, Henry Ford. Over here you have got Abraham Lincoln's, you've got Heinrich Himmler's, you've got Adolf Hitler's, you've got Stanley Lieber, that's Stan Lee. So little in-jokes there, as well as an indication of some of the historical personages' DNA that Sinister has gotten access to. And then Psylocke draws an inference. Of course, it's what we always suspected, Hank. This explains how the Marauders who were killed during the Morlock massacre returned to fight us again. She's referring to Inferno, as well as Riptide's appearance upstairs. So, Threnody just catches the end of what Psylocke said about Riptide. And she says, no, that's not possible. I had an online access to all the internal systems here. The cloning chambers haven't been used since I've been here. There must have been a malfunction. But no, there wasn't a malfunction. And then Threnody here looks alarmed because you don't understand. Sinister's cloning baths were designed in pairs. If a Riptide was created, that means its Matrix partner was also born into Half-Life. So who is it? Well, it's Sabretooth. And that is a grotesque, half-formed clone of Sabretooth with his flesh and muscles in view. And he is deranged and mindless. So Rogue takes him out with one punch here in this particular panel. And Beast here says, a clone with a glass jaw. How disappointing for you, Rogue. But this is that placement of speech balloon problem again, where you want to naturally go from here to here, but the proper route is from here down to here and then up to here. So maybe because Andy Kubert was under deadline pressure to get these breakdowns done, there wasn't the time to think out what might go wrong here with the panel placement. And then Bill Oakley's just doing his best here, but we could do with an arrow to bring us here and then up here for our reading of the dialogue. So that takes care of Sabretooth, and Threnody decides that the best thing to do is to eliminate some of Sinister's power by taking out the room. Sinister would lose access to the genetic research he's been gathering for so very, very long. But Beast is conflicted about it. You know, he's got a conflict in terms of his kind of commitment to science and knowledge, his determination to solve and remedy the legacy virus, and the ethics of allowing Sinister continued access to all this genetic material, including the genetic material of Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler, yes, remember? And Threnody makes the choice for him. She says, yes, you do, Hank. We really have no choice, do we? Sinister must be stopped. So she activates auto-destruct sequence for the subchamber. And then they all get out of there on the double. The place explodes. And Beast says to Threnody, although your intentions are seemingly honourable, I cannot in good conscience allow you to stay here and play in this danger zone any longer. But she responds and says, you have no choice, Hank. Yes, there's something wrong here, I admit that, but I want to find out what. And more, there's knowledge and glory, and I want that too. Besides, Sinister's been gone so much lately, he may not even notice what happened today for months. We have to build on what we started here. Funny as it sounds, it's why you came here to begin with, even if you'd rather not admit it to yourself. You fear him, Beast, and rightly so, for he has power undreamt of. And she says, but if you want to tear down everything Sinister has created, what better way than to have someone doing it for you from the inside? But at what price, Threnody asks? That's what I wonder, what price? As they leave. So interesting this, you know, a little mystery is solved for long-time readers of the X-Men. How did some of those apparently dead marauders from Morlock Massacre return in Inferno? How did they come back to life? And the implication and the conjecture at the time was that Sinister was using clones. And Chris Claremont had an idea for that he obviously was unable to reveal because he quit the X-Men back in 1991. And he was going to reveal that most of the Sabretooths that the X-Men had encountered were clones, Sinister's clones, and that there were only rare encounters with the original Sabretooth, who was much more powerful and deadlier than those clones that were easily defeated sometimes by the X-Men or by Wolverine. So the next issue coming up next box here says, check out X Factor 107 for Mr Sinister. That's why he's not around. He's battling X Factor. Excalibur 79 for startling developments regarding the legacy virus. Professor X is over on Muir Isle at this time. And join us here next month for the return of Cyclops and Jean Grey. Back from, we catch up with them in their honeymoon before something goes wrong, which is what you'd expect. And there you go. Now this is very interesting. Here's a house ad for the upcoming new X-Book title, Generation X. Who will live to join the next generation of X-Men? Find out in the Phalanx Covenant. So all the issues that pertain to the Phalanx Covenants and crossovers. And don't miss the first appearances of Generation X. So this house ad is by Joe Madureira, inked by Terry Austin. Looks great, doesn't it? Excellent. Had me looking forward for this upcoming event. 2 pages devoted to letters here. There's some plugging of the upcoming Rogue Limited series. There's some information on back history of Psylocke as well. And there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 34. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.